All right, everyone, get ready, because today we're diving into some seriously mind-bending stuff with this guy, Álex Gómez Marín.
Yeah, this one really gets into it.
He's not just exploring the brain, he's like questioning the whole darn manual for consciousness itself. And like I said, this is next-level neuroscience we're talking about here.
What's really wild is that Gómez Marín comes at this whole thing from a totally different angle, right?
Right, yeah.
Dude started as a theoretical physicist.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Like approaching the mysteries of the brain with that kind of background. It's no wonder he's able to challenge all those, established ideas in such a profound way.
It's like walking into a room full of expert bakers and saying, guys, maybe we're using the wrong oven here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for Gómez Marín, this isn't just some theoretical exercise either.
Right, there's that whole internal bleeding thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole thing.
Which, to be honest, when I first read about it, I wasn't sure what to expect with this deep dive.
It's intense, but it's actually super crucial to his whole journey because this experience becomes a total turning point for him.
Like forces him to confront the boundaries of what we even know about consciousness.
Even keep in mind, this is a scientist, right? A guy who lives and breathes logic and data.
So let's talk about this near-death experience. It wasn't one of those super dramatic Hollywood NDEs, was it?
No, not at all. Actually, Gómez Marín himself calls it kind of modest.
Oh,
Modest, yeah. No tunnels of light, no angelic choirs, none of that. More like, a hazy, dreamlike encounter with familiar faces. But here's the thing. The impact it had, the way it totally shifted his perspective. Anything but modest.
So it made him question everything, like his whole scientific framework. It wasn't immediate, though. Imagine going through this slow, difficult recovery, all the while asking yourself, what was that? Did that really just happen?
I can't even imagine.
Wrestling with the unknown like that, with an experience that just throws everything you thought you knew out the window, that's what really stuck with him.
And that's got to be something a lot of us can relate to on some level, right? We've all had those experiences that shake things up, make us question, even if they don't involve, almost dying.
Oh, totally. Think about a time when you experienced something that just didn't fit with your understanding of the world.
Okay.
That feeling, that dissonance, that's what Gómez Marín is really getting at with what he calls anomalies.
All right, hit me with it. Anomalies.
So he's talking about things like what happens with psychedelics, near-death experiences, even those precognitive dreams some people have. Right. Yeah. All these experiences that seem to, kind of poke holes in our current understanding of how the brain and consciousness work.
Yeah. And this is where his physics brain really comes in handy.
Oh, absolutely.
Because instead of shying away from those unknowns, those things that don't fit, he leans in.
100%.
Oh.
He's like, okay, what if instead of cramming these square pegs into round holes,
we need some new shapes altogether.
Bingo. And he's also brave enough to just straight up say, we don't have all the answers yet.
Right, and that leads us right into his whole thing with traditional neuroscience.
Which, well, let's be honest, he doesn't exactly hold back on, right?
Not one bit. He calls out those limitations, like when we just point to a certain part of the brain and say, boom, consciousness lives there, we solved it.
Classic. It's like saying, we figured out the heart pumps blood, case closed on the whole mystery of life.
Exactly.
He's pushing for deeper thinking, a willingness to see beyond just the physical stuff,
I am so ready for part 2 of this.
And this is where Gómez Marín brings up this super interesting idea.
Okay.
The permissive brain.
Right. I remember this from the reading.
Okay, so like the main thing in neuroscience now, it's all about the productive brain, right?
Oh, okay.
That's what he calls it anyway. The idea that the brain is this crazy complex machine, like a computer.
Right.
And it's generating consciousness, spitting out thoughts and feelings.
Which kind of makes, we're obsessed with computers these days.
Totally. But Gómez Marín, he asked this question.
Yeah.
What if we've got it all backwards?
Backwards?
Like, what if the brain isn't actually creating consciousness?
Yeah, okay.
What if it's more like a filter?
A filter, so it's like
it's filtering consciousness from, I don't know, somewhere else.
Whoa.
Right? This is the permissive brain model. Like, imagine the brain as this sophisticated radio receiver.
Okay.
Picking up a signal that's already out there consciousness. We're just tuned in.
Okay, now that is wild. That's like a whole different way of seeing things.
It's huge, and it makes you think about how we even study this stuff.
How do you even begin to?
Exactly. That's what Gómez Marín is saying. It's a challenge, and he has this super interesting comparison to the history of science.
I got it.
Galileo specifically.
Right, now we're going way back.
So stick with me here. So back in Galileo's day, they made this conscious decision, right? Science was going to focus on what you could measure, the hard facts, the physical stuff, the laws of motion, all that. Consciousness, too wishy-washy, too hard to pin down.
So they just kind of said, We'll get to that later.
Exactly. And it worked for a while anyway. I mean, centuries of amazing discoveries came out of that approach.
Right.
But Gómez Marín, he makes his point,
Hmm.
by always pushing those big questions about consciousness aside, maybe we ended up limiting ourselves. Like maybe we don't understand the brain as well as we think we do because we keep dodging the big picture stuff.
It's like we're so busy figuring out how the engine works, we forget to ask where the car is even going.
Exactly. You can't understand the car without the driver, right? Maybe it's the same with the brain and consciousness. You got to look at the whole thing.
Okay, so how do we fix that? Do we just tell scientists to, like, stop what they're doing and rethink everything?
Well, Gómez Marín is all about something he calls pluralism in science.
Pluralism meaning, like, more than one right answer.
Exactly. He gives this great example about a cornfield versus a garden.
Okay.
Science has been like a cornfield, right?
Yeah.
Efficient, organized, producing tons of one thing.
Right.
But a garden, it's got variety. Different plants, different ways of growing things.
Yeah.
And honestly, it might reflect the natural world even better than a cornfield does, even if it's messier, less predictable.
So we need scientists to think like gardeners.
That's the idea. Be open to different perspectives, different ways of doing things, even if they challenge the way it's always been done.
Makes sense, but I'd imagine not everyone's thrilled with that idea. Like, challenging the status quo, it ruffles feathers.
Oh yeah, for sure. Gómez Marín talks about facing resistance from other scientists.
Really?
People who are really invested in this materialist view.
That it's all just the brain, no outside forces.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he gets it, right? It's hard to let go of ideas you've built a career on.
For sure. So how does he handle that?
With patience, evidence, and honestly, a little bit of humor.
Well, yeah, you need that, especially with this kind of stuff. It can get heavy.
Totally. But on a more serious note, he talks about the danger of intellectual monoculture. Like if we only allow ourselves to think one way
It's like putting all your eggs in one very fragile basket.
and then being shocked when it breaks. Diversity of thought, different approaches, that's where the really interesting stuff happens.
So where does this all leave artificial intelligence? Gómez Marín, he's got some opinions on that whole world too, right?
Oh, absolutely. And this is where things get really interesting, especially when you bring in someone like Ray Kurzweil.
Kurzweil, now we're talking singularity, AI taking over, the whole 9 yards.
We're going there, but before we do, we should probably give everyone a little refresher on who Kurzweil is, what the singularity actually means.
Yeah, good idea. Back up a sec. Okay, so last time we left off, we were getting into some pretty heady stuff. AI, the singularity, Kurzweil's whole vision of the future.
Right, and how technology might let us, overcome all these limitations, even death itself.
Yeah, uplifting consciousness and all that. It's a lot to wrap your head around. But the big question is, where does Gómez Marín stand on all this?
So he really digs into Kurzweil's ideas. Doesn't shy away from them at all.
Good, because I'm ready for some fireworks.
Well, I don't know about fireworks, but Gómez Marín, he has definitely got questions.
Like what? Spill the tea?
Well, for one thing, what does it even mean to upload consciousness? Like, is it really that simple, just transferring data?
Right, like copying a file.
Exactly. Or are we talking about something way more complex, something that can't be replicated with, just ones and zeros?
It really makes you think about what makes us us, doesn't it? Are we just a bunch of memories and experiences that you could download?
Right, like on a flash drive.
Or is there something more, I don't know, essentially human that can't be captured by code?
That's the million-dollar question. And Gómez Marín, he points out that we can't even agree on a definition for consciousness.
Let alone how you'd actually upload it.
Exactly.
And it's not just the technical side, right? He's got an issue with Kurzweil's whole thing about the singularity being this moral imperative, like it's humanity's destiny to merge with machines.
Oh yeah, he really pushes back on that. He says this need to transcend our limits, even death, it might just be us trying to escape our own human anxieties and fears.
So instead of just racing towards this super high-tech future, maybe we should be asking ourselves why we're so obsessed with getting there in the first place.
100%. What are we actually hoping to achieve? And what might we be giving up in the process? These are questions Kurzweil kind of glosses over, at least according to Gómez Marín.
It's like we're so focused on the how, we forget to think about the why.
Totally. And that's what makes Gómez Marín's perspective so valuable. He's not afraid to poke holes in these big ideas, even if they're coming from a brilliant guy like Kurzweil.
So where does that leave us? I gotta be honest, after this deep dive, my brain feels a little scrambled.
That's totally understandable. But in a way, that's kind of Gómez Marín's point. We live in a world obsessed with quick answers, life hacks, shortcuts,
Yeah, tell me about it.
But when it comes to something as huge, as mysterious as consciousness, maybe the real deep dive isn't about finding all the answers.
Maybe it's about learning to live with the questions.
Exactly. Approaching these big mysteries with, I don't know, a sense of wonder, curiosity, instead of needing to pin it all down, control it.
And who knows, maybe by letting ourselves get a little uncomfortable, by questioning what we think we know, it opens us up to even bigger possibilities down the road.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, on that note, we'll leave you to ponder all of this. Thanks for joining us for this awesome deep dive into the edges of consciousness with the one and only Álex Gómez Marín. We'll catch you next time.